Story 1. Wave around coffee cups, tilt them, gesture with them, carry a tray of 3 large coffee drinks in one hand. Story 2. Not a small thing, but a character who lives in a house or apartment well beyond their means. For example, a restaurant server living alone in a large apartment with a view in a major city. Come on. Story 3. Not sure if anyone has mentioned this. I did not see it while scrolling. When they turn on the television and the exact news they need to see is on at that moment. Story 4. Cook a full breakfast on a school or work morning, and everyone only eats a few bites, leaving everything on the table all day. Story 5. The ease with which computer hackers gain access to systems in 30 seconds or less using 5 lines of simple code. Story 6. Women in any fight or action scenes tossing their long, luscious, perfectly styled hair about. That is annoying even just walking to work or sitting on the sofa, let alone having it fly around your face and obscure your vision in the middle of a battle. I realize movies sell better when women look attractive, but it is so unrealistic. The best example I ever saw of it done right was Birds of Prey when Canary, mid-s kicking, swats her dreads out of her face while yelling in frustration, shouts for a hair tie off one of the other women, and continues kicking ass while quickly putting her hair up. That is all it takes. Story 7. Our heroine is being chased by a murderer. She hides behind a corner, and when he rounds the corner, she hits him with a chair. He goes down unconscious. He has dropped his gun. So the heroine starts running again. How about, take the gun. B, tie him up. C, take his shoes and then run away. D, anything except just running away again without actually doing anything to help yourself. Story 8. When you are watching a medical drama and the doctor draws the blood, walks it to the laboratory themselves, and then proceeds to perform the testing alone in the laboratory that is dark and quiet. Story 9. A character drives into a city center and is able to park directly outside the building they wish to enter. Story 10. A light tap on the head can cause someone to lose consciousness temporarily, after which they wake up without any concussion or side effects. Additionally, women often have difficulty running without falling, and if they do fall, they may remain on the ground or crawl. Story 11. I start. The driver looks at the passenger for much more than 3 seconds, barely looking at the road. Do you want to die? Not properly saying goodbye when talking on the phone. For example, I'm going to meet you there at 9 p.m. and then hanging up. No goodbye? No talk later? Where are the manners? Story 12. Stepping to the other side of the room to have a private conversation. The people they stepped away from are right there, just a few feet away. Story 13. This is not exactly what the original poster meant, but especially in older movies such as The Electric Horseman, Jane Fonda can sleep outdoors in the desert for a week and still look like she just stepped out of the beauty salon. Story 14. Visual art takes time. I dislike it when someone starts working on a blank canvas and it becomes a nearly finished piece 2 minutes later. Story 15. All the men are wearing long pants and warm clothes, and our heroine is in a tight singlet with as much skin and prominent cleavage as possible on display. She never once says, "It's cold," or ever fights crime fully dressed. Story 16. Crime scene investigation television shows have placed unrealistic expectations on law enforcement. You cannot simply say "enhance" to the computer to make a blurry photo clear. Story 17. A group of experts explains something to others during a criminal investigation. Each person contributes 1 sentence, completing each other's thoughts. The team is always in full harmony, and everyone gets a turn to speak. Story 18. Slightly different, but I dislike it when movies show an eagle and play a red-tailed hawk sound instead because it sounds better than what eagles actually sound like. Story 19. Every time someone who is a little nervous walks up to a microphone, they get an awkward squeal of feedback. I have never seen this happen in real life. Story 20. If a woman vomits in a movie and she is not at the tail end of an epic binge, you can be sure she is pregnant. Story 21. When 2 cars are racing and the hero is ahead and pulling away, but for some reason the bad guy has suddenly caught up and is right beside our hero. Then the hero makes a dramatic gear shift, which somehow makes his car go faster again. Did he upshift? Downshift? Did he know his car had this extra ability the whole time but just wanted to let the bad guy catch up? Story 22. There is a major issue, so the people involved all attend a meeting. The problem is explained in a calm, rational way. People then make relevant comments, a few minor disagreements occur, and everyone decides on a course of action. They leave to implement the plan. In real life, there would be a vague idea of the issue, people straying off on unrelated tangents, no solution agreed upon, and another meeting scheduled for next week. People leave and start criticizing others about their ideas. Story 23. Thinking you hear a noise days after several friends have been murdered in brutal circumstances. Then walking down into the cellar half undressed with a candle-powered torch and saying, "Hello! Call the police and get out of the house." Story 24. People are playing poker and continuously breaking the rules. Someone bets and someone else says, "I'll call that bet and raise you." You are not allowed to call and then raise. Calling means you call, not raise. You can fold, call, or raise, choose one. Calling and then raising is considered a string bet. You must call and are not allowed to raise in that situation. Similarly, discussing the action with other players who have yet to act is not allowed. You cannot say to someone who has bet, "I know you are bluffing," because when others still need to act after you. The problem is that anyone who has played poker would know this is incorrect and it spoils the experience for them. Story 25. The breakfast table has a beautiful glass pitcher full of orange juice. Nobody pours orange juice into a glass pitcher. Story 26. Using a defibrillator on someone who is flatlining is not effective. Modern defibrillators will not charge if they do not detect a pulse. They do not restart stopped hearts. Instead, they treat a heart that is currently in fibrillation by delivering a shock to restore normal rhythm. Story 27. Eating at a restaurant, then opening your wallet, pulling out several bills, tossing them onto the table, and leaving without asking for the check. Story 28. Finding an empty parking spot right in front of the destination, getting up in the morning, getting dressed, and going out immediately without stopping to use the restroom. Story 29. When people have a bad dream and they bolt upright in bed. I have had some terrible nightmares and I wake up, as I usually do, by just opening my eyes while lying down. Story 30. Leaving a string of unconscious bad guys. Unless severely brain damaged, they will wake up very soon. You need to restrain and silence them or kill them. They will not stay asleep for the next 15 minutes. Story 31. People in bed after having passionate sexual intercourse getting out of bed still wearing clothes, especially underwear. Story 32. The classic sound of a movie car breakdown is the chugga-chugga clink-clunk sound every car makes as it dies in movies. I have never heard a car make that sound, and I have had many unreliable cars. Story 33. Movies set in a post-apocalyptic world where women still manage to shape their eyebrows. Women screaming while giving birth. You cannot scream and bear down simultaneously. When a fugitive cuts her own hair in a motel room with office scissors and it looks fabulous in the subsequent scenes. A decent pixie cut is tough. Story 34. Tell the bartender you want a beer. Watching an action hero get hit by a semi going 80 miles per hour and somehow he walks away. Story 35. In car films, when they drift around every corner during a police chase, it is much slower than taking the corner normally. Story 36. One thing that has always been strange to me is when they show people playing a video game and the controller does not match the console, or the game shown on the television is not real. It is actually harder to make this mistake. Why go through extra effort to make it wrong? Story 37. Keep their high heels on when they come home from work, on a date, or outside. The second we get home, those are off. Story 38. Being a pilot means you can learn to fly any aircraft just by looking around the cockpit for a few seconds. Story 39. Starting an intravenous line, drawing blood, and other procedures by inserting the needle straight down into the arm. Also, inserting a needle directly into someone's neck, injecting a drug, and they immediately drop to the ground. This drives me nuts. Story 40. The police are interviewing someone, and the interviewee says something interesting. They then end the interview and leave to pursue one lead. In reality, They would likely continue at length and ask the same questions multiple times to gather every detail of information they could. Story 41. People wake up from a supposed full night of sleep looking fresh-faced. Meanwhile, I have drool and dry mouth. Story 42. Characters who recover seemingly overnight from fistfights and gunshot wounds. That takes time, man. Story 43. I'll have a beer at a bar. I realize they don't want to promote specific brands, but it makes me laugh thinking about what my local bartenders would say if I walked in one day and said, "I'll have a beer." They would respond, "No way, this is a brewery." Which one? Story 44. When someone pauses in a sentence at the spot where it is implied they would normally address somebody, inviting them to fill in their name. "It has been a pleasure talking to you, miss." That person always picks up on the cue and introduces themselves. It is an exchange that I have only ever seen in fiction, and it is such an awkward way of asking someone their name that I cannot imagine it ever happening in real life. If it happened to me, I would just think they were done talking, not assume they wanted me to respond. Story 45. When an information technology professional enhances or zooms in on a fuzzy distant photo of someone, and then you can see the person in the photo clearly. Story 46. Two oddly connected things. The first is a man shaving who then wipes off a large amount of foam with a towel. The second is anything post-apocalyptic where women have freshly shaved legs and underarms. Story 47. The main character is being chased and running through a restaurant's kitchen without any of the staff reacting in the slightest, as if it is a normal occurrence in busy kitchens. Story 48. Women with their perfectly done hair never put it up while doing the most physically intensive activities, and somehow it never gets caught in their lip gloss or on their face. They are also wearing 3-inch heeled boots, a leather jacket, a tank top, and skinny jeans. Story 49. Fighting scenes, all of them, are just long, drawn-out choreographed dance sequences with poor camera angles and rapid cuts. No one fights like in the movies. Story 50. There are a couple of things that got old fast for me that seem to be frequent occurrences. People walking away from an explosion with towering flames behind them in slow motion while wearing their toughest "I am a badass" face. And though it would not apply to real life, all superheroes continue to land in the exact same pose from above as everyone else. One knee down, one fist to the ground. Story 51. When a group orders Asian takeout and eats directly out of the cartons with chopsticks, it is unsanitary and makes no sense. For example, you eat rice out of the carton for 5 minutes, then say, "Let me have some kung pao here, let's trade." This is a common, unpleasant habit that can give you norovirus. Story 52. A few. When a character walks down the middle of a street instead of on the sidewalk. No one does that. Ever. Not sure if directors just think it looks cool on film, but I hate it every time. When a character has a gun on an unarmed person and keeps walking closer until the other person can knock the gun out of their hand. Why would anyone do that? Get really drunk and then 10 minutes later, they are functioning normally and fighting a bad guy with no impairments. Or the drunk person drinks some coffee and they are magically fine. Story 53. Escape from quicksand. Growing up in the 1970s and 1980s, I was sure I would face some kind of quicksand peril in my adult life at some point. 0 encounters with quicksand, and I am 54 years old. 0 encounters with a rodent of unusual size as well. I don't think either exists. Story 54. When people have a brief discussion or argument, and then one person walks away, they do not communicate or interact effectively. Story 55. Time travel movies that do not account for or explain the fact that planet Earth is not where it was even 1 minute into the future or past. In order to successfully time travel, you would have to precisely calculate the exact position of Earth in space, travel likely millions of miles in the blink of an eye, and land precisely on an object traveling at 67,000 miles per hour. Story 56. A police officer has just come out of a fast food restaurant with a takeout bag of food. Then a voice on the radio says, "There is a suspicious person in progress at Main and Elm." The officer responds, "We're on it," and quickly throws their lunch into the garbage can before rushing to their car. Or they are at their desk about to bite into a hamburger when their partner comes in and says, "We got a tip on the murder. Let's go." So they toss the burger into the trash. This scenario happens on NCIS a lot. Story 57. Every man in every shower scene in a movie is leaning against a wall for dramatic effect. Their genitalia is always hidden behind a forward-leaning leg. Who showers like that? Story 58. Anytime someone wants to take a necklace, pendant, or medallion from someone, they always grab it and yank it hard to break the chain or strap instead of just lifting it over the person's head or using the clasp. This means the chain or strap is now broken and useless, so they will either have to get a replacement or put the pendant, locket, or jewel in their bag or pocket. The only excuses for this could be time constraints or if the person wearing the necklace is hostile and speed is essential. Otherwise, it is a needless gesture that results in inconvenience at best or the destruction of a priceless or irreplaceable historical item at worst. I rewatched Underworld this past weekend for the first time since I saw it at the cinema, and Bill Nighy's character does this. It is so annoying. Story 59. I do not know why, but I have never thought to splash my face with cold water in a stressful scenario. Story 60. On soap operas, when a main character had a baby, the baby aged normally for the first year. Then, every Christmas, when the family gathered to sing carols on a Christmas episode, the child would age about 5 years. 5 years later, that child, who should have been in pre-kindergarten, was a troubled teenager heading off to college and having an affair with her parents' best friend. Story 61. Get around a large busy city in minutes. No traffic or construction, just open roads and great parking spots. Story 62. Playing an instrument requires proper training with the instrument. No, Sherlock, that is not how you hold a violin bow. Story 63. When people have sex in a film or show, they just roll over and go to sleep or jump up and put their clothes on with no cleanup, as if there would be no consequences afterward. Story 64. Casually keep or hide and then drink alcohol in the middle of their workplace as if it is totally normal behavior. Most places would strongly disapprove of drinking or getting drunk in the workplace, regardless of how good or bad the day was or whether it is after hours. Story 65. A washed-up detective or private investigator rolls out of bed to light a cigarette and swig the remaining beer from the night before, revealing their washboard abs and chiseled physique. Story 66. No one owns any belongings in television shows and movies. There are no piles of doom, junk drawers, or rooms and closets where items go to be ignored. Nothing ever looks lived in, but it may look quirky or fun to show the character's personality, never like someone has lived there long term. Story 67. At least for the United States military, calling female superiors sir would be unacceptable. They have been operating in a male-dominated environment for over 20 years. They deserve to be respected and properly addressed as ma'am. Story 68. Empty coffee cups like the takeout ones with lids. It is so obvious when they are empty by the way the actors handle them, and it drives me crazy. Just put water in them or something. Story 69. When they know there is a killer outside but they open the door, look left, then right while slowly shrugging and turning to go back inside. Slow. Story 70. 5 members of a team brief the supervisor in an orderly and logical manner without repeating or contradicting each other. Story 71. Helicopter swooping drives me nuts. People in a helicopter are hunting someone or something unarmed on the ground, and the pilot makes long swooping passes over the target rather than just hovering and shooting. For example, in the beginning scene of the thing, they could just hover over the dog and kill it. Movie over. I like that movie, but hopefully you get the point. Story 72. Getting into the shower, then turning on the water. People usually run the shower for a minute until the water gets warm. To the waiter, give me a sandwich, beer, or drink. Story 73. When parents are disappointed in their children and invoke the family name shame, you are a tailor. I expect better. My parents never used our last name during a dressing down. Story 74. Getting severely beaten but still being able to fight back and pursue the bad guy for another 3 to 5 miles. I wish my life had a great scene editor to make me look that impressive. Story 75. When they turn their head to talk to someone for 5 minutes while driving, look at the road. Story 76. Hacking, everything related to hacking. Swordfish and Jurassic Park come to mind, but they are always terrible. Not saying goodbye or hello on phone calls. This is more of a television thing, but huge loft apartments in dense urban areas with no explanation of how the financially struggling main characters are living there. Story 77. I would like to see the bartender or waiter struggling at least once. Story 78. Every house has a first aid kit, and the girl has magical medical skills to care for the handsome main actor. Story 79. There is a meeting of any kind in settings like a doctor's office, a courtroom trial, a detective's office, or a Navy admiral's office. No lights are turned on at all. The meeting or hearing is illuminated only by dim sunlight through Venetian blinds, casting lines across everyone's face and the room. The admiral in this case is played by Ed Harris in Top Gun: Maverick. I dislike this artistic style. I have been in many of these situations myself, and they are all brightly lit as if it is high noon outside. Story 80. Every shop in every movie is always welding or grinding something so that sparks are flying. The sound effect never matches the tool. Cutting torches sound like grinders. Grinders sound like torches. It makes no sense. I often wonder if it is done intentionally, considering how often I see it. Story 81. They romanticize drinking as if it is like water, and then you see them getting up the next day as if they never had a sip of alcohol in their life. Laughing my ass off. Story 82. People waking up with makeup still on and their hair combed. Why does no one have to go to the bathroom? Story 83. Firing guns in enclosed spaces. Firing 2 guns at once. Cocking shotguns constantly. Unnecessary use of Glock pistols. Story 84. Having a gun battle in close quarters and then carrying on a conversation in a normal voice volume is impossible. Firing a gun a few times will cause your ears to ring for a while. Story 85. I have noticed that people working on laptops immediately close them completely whenever someone enters their office or room. Does anyone do that? I understand it might convey they are giving full attention, but the person entering is interrupting whatever work is being done on the laptop. Closing the laptop slightly or moving it to the side would work as well. Can also seem suspicious, as if the person on the laptop is trying to hide something. Story 86. 1. People getting shot in the chest or abdomen and still being able to run and fight as if they were not shot at all. When people have a cardiac arrest in a movie or television show, there is no cardiopulmonary resuscitation, no chest compressions, and no rescue breaths. They just place the defibrillator paddles on the person and deliver a shock. Then the heart flatlines, another shock is delivered, flatline again, shock again, and then they regain a pulse. It always happens on the third shock. They are always being shocked in asystole, which is a flatline and not a shockable rhythm. Additionally, 9 out of 10 survive and are just fine, compared to the single-digit survival rates actually seen. Story 87. When I watch dubbed films, English is not my native language, and they translate the original literally. This means you hear the characters use expressions nobody ever uses in real life. Also, the inflections in the dubbed versions sound really weird and unnatural. Story 88. Have all the lights on in the house and then leave the house with the lights still on without locking it. Story 89. When there is fighting going on, they all take turns going after the main character rather than 2 to 3 jumping them at a time. Story 90. When a character has their skeleton played like a xylophone and they strike the same rib twice in succession, they produce 2 clearly different tones. Story 91. Oh man, I forgot a major one. When people have a breakdown and slide down the door while crying, who does that? Story 92. Any film with people driving from place to place in an urban setting where most of the 90 to 120 minutes is not spent looking for a parking place. Yellowstone, going from point A to point B in a car. Montana is large, and the drive from point A to point B takes over 3 hours. Yellowstone again. In 5 seasons, did it ever snow in Montana? Rain? Story 93. Using small two-way radios with short antennas and having a crystal clear conversation with a person using a similar radio on another part of the island. Story 94. Can we meet later? Sure. Okay, see you then. When? Where? Not actually making plans, but magically knowing where to go. Story 95. When 2 young people have sex for the first time, They stand on opposite sides of the bedroom and slowly, awkwardly remove one piece of clothing at a time until they are completely naked. Who actually does that? Story 96. An audience attending an early concert of a future music star is able to tell that the musician is very talented. They all listen quietly before applauding enthusiastically. Story 97. I was just saying this last night. I hate when people are showering in a movie and they get out, barely dry themselves, and then put on their clothes. Maybe I'm crazy, but I really hate the feeling of clothes on my damp body. Story 98. Orders or makes a coffee or full breakfast, then sits down, has a brief conversation, does not touch the food, and then says we have to run. Story 99. Consistently having fresh, clean haircuts and neatly trimmed facial hair every day is important. This is especially true in police dramas such as Law and Order, where the entire force is always well-groomed. However, anyone familiar with real-life police officers knows this is rarely the case. Story 100. Having a full conversation in a loud bar or club without yelling into somebody's ear is possible. People have conversations in clubs at the same volume they would in a coffee shop. Story 101. Keys in the sun visor in every car. Picking up the phone and saying yes. Hanging up the phone without any kind of goodbye. Throwing and taking punches for days with no hand fractures. Inhuman stamina levels. Story 102. When someone knocks on a door and it opens so fast, they must have been standing and staring at the door, waiting. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.